ULTRAKILL is a fast-paced, score-based shoot-'em-up game that resembles Doom to an extent. It's known for not only its fun gameplay, but also its high skill floor. Of the levels currently in the game, since it's in early access, there's a level in the game that is noticeably harder to complete than any other. This level is called P-1. This level is so difficult that at first it looks impossible. However, strategies were discovered to make this fight noticeably more consistent, and even allowed for the start and expansion of the speedrunning of this level. However, as runners kept pushing for the perfection, not only would new strategies develop and new players come to the forefront, but also new content would be released that would turn not only this entire battle for the top on its head, but also stir up the community as a whole. This is the story of the P-1 P% world record progression. Now, some people might hear what I just said and say, okay, so I get that this P-1 is a very hard level. What in the world is P%? Well, P% is a speedrun, in this case on an individual level, to get what is considered a P rank. Normally the scoring system goes somewhat like you would expect on a tier list. D, C, B, A, S. The score you get for the level is determined by three other things that are ranked in the same fashion: time, kills, and style. Time is pretty self-explanatory, since it's just finish under a certain time. Kills is also pretty easy, since there's only a certain amount of enemies that can spawn in a given level. And in most cases, S rank for kills is just kill every enemy. Style is the difficult one, not only to explain, but also to perform. It has an entire wiki page dedicated to it, and it's the one that, when doing a P% run, is most commonly missed. What it boils down to is kill enemies stylishly, as the name implies. Also, don't get hit, because that'll subtract points from the score. Now, if you've never played ULTRAKILL before, you may be thinking, but what about this P rank? Didn't you say P rank, not S rank? And that's correct. Normally, 3 S ranks would amount to an S rank, as you would figure. However, P rank is a little different. You must clear the entire level with all 3 S ranks, but with the certain condition of never dying or resetting to a checkpoint, meaning you have to do it in one straight shot. Keep in mind, though, that what we're looking for here is to play at this near-perfect level on the hardest level currently in the game. However, this secret level is a bit different from all the other secret levels so far. In the other layers, the secret level is more of an out-of-the-way puzzle that you have to solve to get into. For example, as for the secret layer in Prelude, you have to find a secret room containing a key, only to find another secret room to find where to place it and go out a secret exit. This one, though, had an unlock requirement apart from just simply finding it. Looking at this door to the secret level, we can see a bunch of P symbols in a specific pattern. This pattern indicates the levels currently in the game, and the P symbol obviously meaning P ranking all of the levels listed. So for this door, it implies that we need to achieve a P rank on every level from 0-1 all the way to 3-2. So to even access the level of P-1, you need at least some mastery of every single level listed here. That would take quite some dedication and a good understanding of the game's mechanics. It's also quite the task. That aside though, what lies beyond this door? Well, as you probably might have guessed, beyond this door is the level P-1, currently the hardest level in the game. You enter the level to see a pretty weird looking staircase that leads you downward. Following it takes you to a door that drops you into a hallway. Beyond this is a checkpoint for the boss, Flesh Prison, commonly referred to as FP by the community. This boss is Bullet Hell. It has 3 main attacks: Cyan, White, and Purple. Cyan spams homing shots. White is a massive AoE that comes from the sky, and Purple is a black hole that spawns that limits you to 1 health for a time should it hit you. Flesh Prison also spawns miniature floating eyeballs that shoot lasers at you occasionally. However, this isn't much different from the normal bosses in the game, perhaps maybe a little harder to dodge on occasion. The real difficulty has to do with these little eyes mentioned earlier. After a certain amount of time elapses, Flesh Prison enters a heal state, where all of its attacks are paused for a time, and the eyes that have not been destroyed yet gather to heal it. There is a short pause, and then each eye regenerates 10% of Flesh Prison's health. During the time that Flesh Prison is healing, it takes very greatly reduced damage, so you cannot just out-damage it and hope to outrun the heal. So, you could probably see how this gets pretty annoying if all of your progress just suddenly melts because you forgot to kill an eye or two. So how do you go about beating this thing? Well, speedrunners noticed a couple of things about this. First, it was noticed that there would be a moment before it heals, and you could still damage it and kill any remaining eyes, allowing the possibility to finish off the last little bits of its HP before it managed to heal. It also wouldn't spawn eyes for a time after it already has, meaning if you killed all the eyes immediately, it won't spawn more eyes for a little while. But other than that, it's just dodge the bullet hell style attacks while punching it repeatedly. Just keep in mind the eyes need to be destroyed at some point. Or possibly, if you could kill it fast enough, it wouldn't even have the chance to heal. The first time ever submitted to the leaderboard for a speedrun of P-1 was on the day after the patch release, April 14th of 2021, with a time of 1 minute and 59.527 seconds by Yellow Swerve, who's actually a moderator of the leaderboards. Here's how that Flesh Prison fight went.
Everyone that just showed up, go buy ULTRAKILL. It's on sale. It's the best FPS ever made, and maybe the best game ever made. It's got everything. That's an insane time, dude. 34 seconds. That's probably the fastest this ass has ever been killed.
Now, obviously this isn't the entire level, and there's more level to be completed after this, but I feel like I should explain what's going on here for any viewers that aren't familiar with the game, or even any that aren't familiar with this boss. Firstly, instead of taking the downward staircase, Yellow Swerve intentionally jumps to the point where the door should be, and then uses the torch picked up previously as the key to open the door to the boss room. Then, he fights Flesh Prison. He immediately does some things here that are worth explaining. First, he launches 2 coins and then shoots the rail cannon into it very specifically. This is known as rail coining. These coins are a mechanic of the marksman revolver, where if you shoot the coin, your shot bounces off of it and goes straight into an enemy's weak point. Also, if there's more than one in the air, they chain into each other, increasing the damage dealt. Something also worth noting about this shot is this electric rail cannon variant specifically has insane amounts of pierce damage. It just goes through everything. Therefore, it can, theoretically, hit the enemy, go through the enemy and damage it, hit the coin, reflect the beam off of the coin, and the beam ends up going through the enemy again. The only requirement of this is that the coin or coins being placed in line with the enemy you're shooting in a very specific manner. It's a pretty widely used strategy against enemies with large amounts of HP, and still widely used to this day, actually. Now, there's a lot of tech around coins specifically, and I am nowhere near qualified to talk about that. However, there is a coin mechanic guide video made by widely respected community member Herb Messiah. It's about 20 minutes long, and if you're interested in learning about coin mechanics, I highly recommend you check that out. I will link that in the description. Just to drive the point home about coins, though, they're very broken. You end up using them a lot if you speedrun this game. After that, Yellow Swerve manages to cause dozens of explosions via shotgun, and continues using this strategy for the rest of the fight. If that looks weird to you, that's because it is. It's referred to by the community as a projectile boost, or a shotgun punch. This is actually an intended mechanic, believe it or not. Well, almost. The gist of how this works is that it slightly abuses the parrying mechanic, where because of the way the shotgun shoots, you can actually parry your own bullet. Because of the way parrying works, when something gets parried, it will cause an explosion where it lands. Therefore, the shotgun pellet ends up doing explosion damage instead of whatever damage it was going to do. This is actually one of those things that new players will accidentally do when trying to shoot and parry an incoming shot simultaneously. Once discovered, this becomes a main staple of tech in anyone's playstyle. Why? Because it's not very complicated to figure out, and it's very effective against basically everything. The funny part is, despite this originally being a glitch, Hakita the developer actually made this an intended mechanic after it was discovered, and even added a style point bonus for performing it. So really it's not a surprise that this was the strategy chosen to defeat Flesh Prison. However, P-1 isn't done yet. You see, this blue thing isn't the reward you get for defeating Flesh Prison. No, it's a second boss. This one is called Minos Prime, somehow a harder boss than what you just fought. Honestly, when you first meet this guy, it feels like he's cheating. He manages to surprise you every time he pulls out an attack you haven't seen. It really gets annoying when this dude starts teleporting, either really far away to slam at you, or teleporting onto you to cause a massive shockwave. One thing that makes this fight noticeably easier than you would think is how clearly all of his attacks are telegraphed. He actually does an anime-style call-out of all of his attacks he's about to do, with little to no exception. This bit I'm going to read directly from the ULTRAKILL wiki. Minos Prime is an incredibly powerful enemy, capable of chaining attacks to kill V1, the player, in seconds. It only takes a moment of inattention to be utterly destroyed. That's the problem. He will combo you to death with the slightest mistake. So with all of these cheaty style attacks and the sheer difficulty of this fight, P-ranking this is the hardest thing a player can do in this game thus far. So how does Yellow Swerve manage to beat this thing? Not only in the first place, but in a timely, stylish fashion, something the game considers to be cleared perfectly. The first thing he does is wait through most of the cutscene of Minos' monologue, since he's waiting for the correct chance to do something flashy to do a bunch of damage. He ends up doing something similar to the rail coining we saw earlier in the Flesh Prison fight, only this time he does it with a piercing revolver shot and not the rail cannon. Something else that happens, and it's kinda hard to see since the game doesn't even render it properly, is that he pulls out the coin revolver again, spits out another coin, and shoots it with the electric rail cannon, effectively rail cannoning Minos again. After this, from the bar on the left, we can see that Yellow Swerve did something called a quick draw twice. Going through the footage slowly, we can see from the weapon selection bar on the right that he pulls out the blue shotgun to do a quick hit on Minos, since close range shotguns do some of the highest damage in the game. After this is some movement and shooting reminiscent of what you would see from basically any other high health boss encounter in the game. Nothing too unexpected of a boss in a shooter game other than just waiting for your high damage things to recharge. However, at the end of this fight, something funny does happen. Minos goes for his attack, Thy End Is Now, which ends up being his own demise. This attack is the easiest of his to dodge. Continuous movement in any given direction will allow you to dodge it, meaning Yellow Swerve here literally walks backwards, dodging every hit, and was able to spam coins until Minos eventually just runs out of health. Something worth mentioning for this level specifically is that unlike most other levels in the game, where time stops when you enter the shaft at the end, time stops here when Minos is killed. Hence the somewhat unusual not mad dash to the exit, but instead bringing up the in-game stat screen when the fight concludes. However, when he dives into the shaft at the end, we can see the in-game stats in their full glory from the ending screen. He got an in-game time of 159.527, which is actually the time that the leaderboards go by on speedrun.com. The S-rank time requirement is actually 3 minutes and 33 seconds. He set almost half of the time of what the devs thought you would need to score S-rank. The style points he got 8,883 of, where the S-rank mark is 7,500. The kills don't matter so much since there's only 2 enemies in this level and you have to kill both of them to complete it, therefore you'll get the S-rank by default. And finally, the thing that makes or breaks that nice golden P, no, not like that, is this little bit of text here that says, no restarts. And never once in this level did Yellow Swerve die or reset to a checkpoint, the essence of P rank. What makes this run even more impressive is that this was performed on the day of this update releasing. This set a very high bar, quite literally immediately, for what the world record should be. The next day, on the 14th of April 2021, a runner by the name of Travis Boy gets a 146.446, beating Yellow Swerve's previous record by an astonishing 13 seconds. But how? How did Travis manage to beat an already very solid time by that much? Well, something that you can see, actually, within the first few frames of gameplay, is that Travis has 200 health, implying that he's playing on the Harmless difficulty. There are a few advantages to the Harmless difficulty, such as the frequency of attacks and, in some cases, the severity of the attacks lessened drastically. There are a couple cases in this level specifically where this occurs. The first one is during the Flesh Prison fight. And instead of spawning 10 eyes, it will spawn 5, meaning you can spend even less time shooting them. The other instances are on Minos Prime, where, as the wiki says, his attacks are significantly slower, and his Die, Crush, and Judgment have smaller shockwaves and explosions. He does not gain any more stamina going into Phase 2. Now that's a pretty big deal. All of Minos' attacks being nerfed would mean that the speedrun could go from focusing on evasion and or parrying to being able to focus a lot of its attention on the damage output, which, in terms of a speedrun, is exactly what we want. However, it would be pretty logical to ask, if this is so much easier, wouldn't it be illegal? And the answer is actually no, and Travis took full advantage of this. In ULTRAKILL speedrunning, you're allowed to use any difficulty you want. There's no catch. However, most runners choose the hardest available difficulty since it makes enemies faster, and therefore, as far as a speedrunner is concerned, they're going to be running to their death noticeably quicker. In a level like P-1, where there are exactly 2 enemies, one of which is literally immobile, having slower enemies wouldn't affect a thing. As far as the world records are concerned, however, a bit of the time save here actually comes from just this opening bit, where Travis just jumped a bit more confidently than Yellowswerve did. There's also a bit less hesitation with torch key placement, and although Travis's isn't exactly perfect, it is noticeably better. This, again, saves just a little bit more time. Once in the boss room, in the same manner as is taken against all bosses in this game, Travis unleashes an absolutely massive combo, although it is a bit different from Yellowswerve's. Entering the room, he charges a nail gun by shooting with the blue variant, and then unleashes the full extent of the green variant, called Overheat. Then Travis goes for the same strategies we've seen before with the rail coining. This time, however, he uses 3 coins, which does a little extra damage. And then comes an obscene amount of shotgun punches. And I mean a lot of shotgun punches. Something else he did is he used what is called a shotgun swap, where you can skip the reload animation of the shotgun by pressing a key to swap to the other variant, making it possible to fire them off more rapidly. Also, since this is the Harmless difficulty, Flesh Prison didn't really attack. In fact, it only managed to get off 1 iteration of the white attack. It also only started trying to heal, but a little too late. Turns out that it's really easy to focus on damage output when there isn't as much risk of dying. That being said, this is not an unimpressive feat. All things considered, Travis still did clear the level very quickly. Something else interesting I noticed is that Travis didn't even bother shooting the little eyes, whereas, comparing to Yellowswerve, he spent about 5 or so seconds explicitly shooting eyes. Then it was on to the Minos fight. Travis starts off with a different technique entirely, coin punching. As it turns out, throwing a coin in the air, punching it, and then waiting for it to fall so you can punch it again, and not letting it hit the ground, will make it do a lot more damage. It'll actually keep floating theoretically forever unless you don't punch it. There's a trick that Travis used here, whereas instead of just wasting time during the cutscene, he was able to go straight for the coin punching technique. He charged up several rounds of coin punch, and effectively doing that many times more damage in the end, then skipping the cutscene and spawning Minos. Once Minos is spawned, the next coin will not launch into the air, but instead go straight into Minos' head. This already does some pretty decent damage, but then with a charged shot from the Piercer revolver, it did something very similar to the rail cannon trick. The Piercer, as the name implies, pierces enemies. Also, with coin punching, the coin will start falling exactly where it was last hit. In this case, Minos' head, meaning the coin will fall in a way that, if shot correctly, will combine a headshot and a hit on the coin simultaneously, and this is exactly what happens. The alt piercer being fired into Minos, now hitting twice since that's how the charge shot works, and then reflecting off the coin to hit twice more, giving a nice 4 times headshot bonus. This is followed by some standard boss fight procedures, and then comes some shotgun spam that's quite frankly ridiculous. This knocks off over a quarter of Minos' health. After this, Minos picks what is quite possibly the worst attack to follow up with, which keeps him at predictably close range and allows a very hard-hitting parry. Also, since this is not performed on violent difficulty, the explosion does not deal damage if you parry the attack. Another couple of shotgun punches, parry of this serpent, and another point-blank shotgun ends Minos. Luckily, during this run, Travis has the timer and information tab open on the left, so we can pretty easily keep track of where all these points came from. His style, you may notice, was noticeably higher than Yellowswerve's was, mainly because he was hit by attacks a lot less, and his style didn't take a nosedive at any point. This was another benefit of him playing on Harmless difficulty as opposed to Violent. The standard set by this run was all the more impressive than the previous one, although, looking at it from a purely objective point of view, and also in retrospect a little bit, there were some unoptimized portions. For example, the torch at the beginning wasn't placed the best it could be. However, Travis felt no need to stop there. A few days later, on April 18th, he posted a time of 1:34.767, besting what was the world record by 12 seconds yet again. How in the world did he optimize it that much further in just a few days? It's not like that 146 previously was a slacker's time, so to speak. Looking at the run, there's a couple of things that he does that saves times quite considerably. Initially, we can see that he keeps the Harmless difficulty strategy, which is apparently beneficial to the run. He keeps in line with his previous run for a while, and then pulls ahead a bit with the slightly better torch placement than the previous run. Getting into the Flesh Prison fight, he leads with something absolutely ridiculous. He uses the same strategy on Flesh Prison that he used on Minos last time, the coin plus the piercer revolver. It ends up hitting the maximum theoretical amount of times until it hits something known as a pierce cap. This is when the pierce shot maxes out how many times it can hit. And this is only possible because of the massive size of Flesh Prison's hitbox. However, this isn't the end of the combo, as you can tell. This time we see him throw several more coins. This is used similar to how both him and Yellow Swerve have led against Flesh Prison previously, where they throw a few coins and then rail cannon it. As with the piercer shot immediately prior, it did the same thing and basically just bounced around inside the hitbox. This was a really good Flesh Prison fight. This is actually the fastest Flesh Prison fight we have seen so far, and a speed up from the previous run for sure. So at this point in the run, he is nearly 3 seconds up ahead of his prior world record. But that's not 12. So how did he make up 9 seconds in just the Minos fight? We see him wait for several seconds initially, waiting for the coins to recharge so that he can perform the coin punching strategy again. Only this time when he does it, he follows up with spitting out a few more coins to heighten the amount of damage and the number of ricochets a shot does. The effects of the combo are shown adequately on the right side of the screen. Headshot combo times 8 and Rico shot. He also went straight into his judgment attack, which was pretty easily parried by someone doing a fair amount of shotgun punching. This essentially starts the fight with a Minos at about 40% health. Comparing this to his last record, it's fairly easy to see why he was able to save so much time. His combos were plainly better. Last time he had a heavy reliance on the, somewhat, at the time, inconsistent nail gun to start, and this time he brought in a very strong combo to take off massive chunks of health instantly. After this, the world record remained unchanged for about a month. During this time, no one managed to beat his time, and they never managed to beat this time during this patch of the game. Then Travis came back at himself with a 131.045, yet another 3 seconds of time save. But where? Well, one factor is that there was a miniature patch around this time that added Slab revolvers, which were more powerful in exchange for firing much slower. And Travis fully intended to use them. This is a combination of his two best efforts so far. He leaped off the initial platform like he did in the first world record, then employing the nail gun strategy of charging the overheat and letting loose the barrage. This is that orange bar. After that, he then also employed the strategy used in the later 134, where he let a piercer shot and the electric rail cannon do unbelievable amounts of damage while boosting off of coins. This time, however, he changed up his follow-up. Instead of projectile boosting repeatedly, he decided to jump around Flesh Prison while shotgun swapping and punching with the red arm. Believe it or not, this is actually one of the most effective forms of damage, over 2 seconds faster than his previous run. What about Minos, though? He leads the same way against Minos as he did in the 134, with that flashy new tech used against bosses. He once again has Minos use Judgment, and then Minos makes another mistake by using Thy End Is Now. This move is what allowed Yellow Swerve to walk backwards and finish off Minos in his world record. This is the easiest move that Minos has to dodge, and the easiest move in terms of allowing you to hit Minos while he's attacking. Minos gets several well-deserved shotgun punches straight to the face, then the electric rail cannon is sent into the coin for big damage, killing Minos on the spot. This ends the level with a new world record of 131.045. Oddly enough, this was performed on a mini patch as I mentioned earlier, but this actually nerfed the run in a sense. The coin strategy that could have killed Flesh Prison on its own only got it down to about a third of its original health this time. Despite this debuff, however, the new world record was a large improvement. If it wasn't for this debuff, it might have actually even broken the sub 130 here and now. Unfortunately, that never came to pass, and the 131.045 that was set on May 22 of 2021 is currently Travis's best P1 P% time. He would go on to focus on other things. So what happened to P-1 P% as a category? Well, it would never have expected what was about to happen to it. On June 24th, 2021, a new patch for the game was released. This patch added a fourth layer to the game, greed. It's set in a desert, and there are plenty of things to be discovered here. Crucially though, the final boss of Greed, the V2 rematch in 4-4, offers a brand new tool to the arsenal of ULTRAKILL players that have managed to best V2 for a second time. A grappling hook. It may not seem like much, but this grappling hook changed the game completely. It almost certainly hits anything in the general direction you throw it at. The grappling hook mechanics changed the way that combat scenarios are handled completely. You can grapple a lighter, smaller enemy to pull it towards you, or you can pull yourself towards a heavier or larger enemy. It may not seem like much, but this makes so many things, including movement, so much quicker. So, all of that considered, how did this affect the P-1 P% run? Well, to be honest, it didn't change anything at first. It took a couple of weeks for players to figure out how to best use this thing. However, when it comes to the grappling hook, there was one person who stood out among the crowd. In fact, it wasn't even a person at all. It was a duck. I present to you the prodigious Queck. On July 5th, 2021, 12 days after the release of Greed and subsequently the grappling hook, Queck got a run that implemented strats never before seen. Strats that were actually not possible without the grappling hook. Not only that, he completely redefined the speedrun as to how it should be performed. He leads with the strategy never before seen in this level, called slam storage. This is a known tech where if you jump into a wall and slam at the same time, the game will think that you're continuously falling and therefore building up momentum you can use at a later time. However, that was never even considered as a viable strategy in this level before, the only reason for this being the torch at the very beginning of the level. Hypothetically, if you were to do typical slam storage strategies, picking up the torch key would either be wildly inconsistent or completely impossible. However, the grappling hook completely bypasses that and allows for the grabbing of the torch at range, something not possible before. He also utilizes it to light up the path as he's falling, allowing minor adjustments to be made mid-air to position himself very precisely. Not only can the torch be picked up at a range and now be thrown ahead to light the path, but it can also be placed from range, and in a way in which the door will open by the time you need to go through. Gone were the days of waiting for the door to open. Now, with precise aiming and a bit of preparation, the door will be open enough for you to throw yourself through it. Now, I mentioned that the grappling hook changed both movement and the combat. The grappling hook allows for a genuinely ridiculous strategy to be employed against Flesh Prison. He leads with an overpumped shotgun blast to get himself propelled into the air via the explosion. Then, he grapples Flesh Prison. Now, I don't know about you, but the game seems to deem a Flesh Prison as a heavier, larger enemy. This would then make the player be drawn to it rather than vice versa. From there, the duck performs a modified version of what Travis was trying to do in his most recent 131, that being shotgun swap punching. Only this time it is made noticeably easier and faster thanks to the fact that Queck was falling onto Flesh Prison rather than Travis jumping into Flesh Prison. After a few bouts of that, all of the eyes spawn, which Queck deals with them by nuking them. Nuking is the tech for shooting the grenade out of the blue shotgun, and then shooting the grenade with the red variant of the rail cannon called the Malicious Rail. The Malicious Rail cannon creates the biggest explosion in the game. Also, when the grenade is shot, it also explodes. Combining these two explosions gets you something that will clear out a sizable area of anything that was alive. It's also casually used if you need to throw yourself down a long hallway, but that doesn't really apply here. In this instance, it's used for cleaning out several eyes at once, and very quickly at that. After a few coin shots to wipe out any eyes that were left, he goes back to the shotgun punch swapping technique, expertly and barely avoiding the purple attack that Flesh Prison put out. A few rounds of this, and the start of a cyan attack that ends up never going off, leaves Flesh Prison dead and the Minos orb spawning at 28.447. In the description of the video he says, "I'm so mad. First time I got a fast Minos kill in a run, but the prison was bad. This Flesh Prison fight was quite bad, and he would have to make up for it in the Minos fight." What was this fast kill he was talking about? Coins. Just coins. We've seen this strategy before, but not in the same way. What ends up happening here is that Queck juggles the coin a few times, since each punch increases damage dealt, and then once he's done that enough, he starts to fight and immediately punches it straight into Minos' head. We've seen this before, but not what happens afterward. Queck goes back in and punches the coin again as opposed to shooting it, taking advantage of the fact that Minos stands still for a brief moment even before attacking. Queck was able to track down and punch the coin into Minos repeatedly, dealing broken amounts of damage as we can clearly see by how quickly Minos' health bar is dwindling. The reason that Queck's able to track down the coin so accurately has to do with something I mentioned earlier. The coin, when punched, will attempt to go straight into the nearest enemy. In this case, this is Minos. After going straight into Minos, it flies directly above his head. Therefore, we can predict where the coin should be after we punch it. This is exactly what Queck does. Repeatedly. After it gets to the point where there is one hit left, Queck fires the Slab revolver at it, shooting the coin into Minos after all of this punching, ending the fight. Something funny about this fight is that after the final shot, you may notice that the style for this level, which is kept track of on the little tab on the left, says he has well over 160,000 style points. This might be due to the fact that his shot counted as what the feed calls an ultra ricochet times 8,191. An ultra ricochet occurs when anything other than just the plain revolver shot ricochets off the coin. In this case, the charge shot ricocheted off it. But 8,191, that's not normal. I thought about this for a while and I did a little math, and actually ended up with an explanation as to what's happening here. If we take the phrase ultra ricochet times 8,191 to interpret it to mean one ultra ricochet and 8,191 more, we get, surprisingly, 8,192. We know the coin punching deals 2 damage, and each subsequent punch of the same coin increases the damage dealt. At the time, this was an exponential multiplier, which meant that the coin did 2 damage to the power of x, where x was the number of interactions with the coin. Here we can count there were 12 punches to the coin and 1 shot in the end, for a grand total of 13 interactions. Plugging this in, it is 2 to the 13th power, which is 8,192. Only after I spent a considerable amount of time on this did I realize that Queck actually explained this in the comment section as a reply, and I was too stupid to look there. Ignoring my own incompetence, this has since been patched. Now you get simply a +1 damage bonus per punch as opposed to what was literally exponential growth. Despite this mega nerf, however, it's extremely good and still a widely used strategy. Using this strategy, Queck set a time of 130.215, a second clear of the previous world record, or just about. However, remember the comment that Queck made in the video description about the bad flesh prison fight. Using Minos spawning as a time frame rather than the moment the flesh prison implodes, he had Minos spawn at 123.872, which is less than 6.5 seconds before Minos was completely dead. Reportedly, his best ever Minos spawn was a 120.144, 3.7 seconds faster. Therefore, he concluded that his best theoretical time in this instance was a 126.537, combining his best Minos kill and best flesh prison kill. As is typical speedrunner fashion, Queck is not satisfied with this momentous time barrier being left unbroken, namely the sub 130 barrier. He was not done bullying Minos Prime. 22 days later, on July 28, 2021, Queck had finally managed to do it. He chained together some amazing sections of a run to throw together a 127.582. In this run, he managed to get the flesh prison to implode at 25.948, 2.5 seconds clear almost exactly of the 28.447 he got in his previous world record. This is where Queck made up most of his time. In fact, in the Minos fight, he made up just under 0.2 seconds, since the same strategy was implemented. Funnily enough, he still managed to get the ultra ricochet times 8,191. With these few seconds saved, Queck was very comfortably on top of the leaderboards here. For the rest of this patch, no one even managed to match Queck's inferior time of 130.215, let alone his new record. And for the time, this laid the category to rest, since Queck's time was simply not matchable with current techniques. Not that there weren't other good players, but P-1 P% isn't really a big category, and considering the exceptionally high skill you must have to even be able to speedrun this level in the first place, let alone be good at it, it's no surprise. Eventually though, the slumbering beast would be reawakened, and come back with a vengeance. On August 14th, 2021, there was another update to the game referred to as the Sandbox Update. In this update, they added a sandbox mode, hence the name, as well as used this opportunity to fix a number of bugs, one of which was this ridiculous exponential multiplier for the coin. One of the biggest new changes was the nail gun receiving a slight buff. The one that concerned the run most was the first one on this list. Greatly decreased the amount of time to start firing after switching weapons, which is nice because now it no longer takes a long time for the gun to actually start firing, which now allows some strategies that involve switching rapidly between the blue and green variants. For this run, this meant that the nail gun strategies used by Travis months prior were suddenly fair game again, as now the nail gun is a feasible weapon choice. Enter the lukewarm fixes 8B and 8C. In the 8B lukewarm fix, your weapons would be recharged after skipping a cutscene to the point they would have been charged at had you not skipped the cutscene. This would be especially useful for being able to charge the rail cannon by skipping the cutscene. Previously, you would have to wait through the whole thing before it would be available, but now that's not the case. The other thing that got updated was the nail gun, again. In the same fix, nails received what was called improved physics, and also a slight debuff damage-wise, as each nail now did 0.02 less damage. In the 8C lukewarm fix, the pull strength was increased from 200 to 300, meaning the nails could be slightly less accurate and still end up on the magnet. These things combined would make one hell of a nail trap, which is when you place all the nails you can in one spot and lure an enemy over it, doing ridiculous amounts of damage. This is a lot more hurtful to an enemy than just shooting them with your nails and hoping for the best. So with these strategies combined, now having nail gun craziness as well as a charged rail cannon when the cutscene is skipped, Queck returned to the category on August 29th, 2021, 5 days after the 8C lukewarm fix, and set a new time to beat. He leads off with a multi-hit coin strategy and the charged revolver shot that we've seen before. Then he leads straight into his shotgun and punching strategy that we've seen before, right before nuking the eyes. Something interesting that also got added in the update was that Flesh Prison now had a green bar below its health to show when it will next try to heal. Unfortunately for the Flesh Prison, Queck can do damage a lot faster. And here comes the part we've all been waiting for. The absolute annihilation of Minos via nails. Queck uses his time here during the cutscene, instead of punching coins, to lay down a nail trap. Then he punches a coin a few times anyway, just for good measure. Minos jumps into the air, allowing a very good hit between the charged up coin from all the punching and the charged revolver shot. A quick rail cannon at the end to hit again creates enough of an effect to kill Minos on the spot, leaving a final time of a 121.353. This run actually is a very good example of showing something about P%'s difficulty. I've mentioned before that there's requirements for these S ranks. The time requirement is 3 minutes and 33 seconds, and the kill requirement is 2. However, the minimum style required for S rank was 7,500. Queck here achieved 7,834. It actually wasn't even past that until the feed completely updated on the final combo. Even then, it's not that much of a margin to hinge an entire run on. It didn't matter though, as the requirement was still hit and therefore still counted as P rank. But this is what makes P rank so difficult. You could theoretically clean up every single enemy in a level in world record time, but you didn't quite score enough style to do it, and therefore it didn't count as P rank, and your run is invalid. 11 days later, on September 8th, 2021, Queck would upload a 120.816. This run uses the same strategies as the previous one, the only real difference being slightly cleaner movement. After this, talk of a theoretical sub 120 began. The record was less than a second off after all, and it seemed that every pro speedrunner was in agreement that this was possible. A few days after that 120.8 was set, there was a game-changing conversation that took place between Travis, the former record holder, Hayes, one of the most revered and talented runners in the community, and Queck himself, who ended up being the one implementing the strategies talked about after they were proven possible. He was also the one who made a snippet of this conversation the thumbnail for the latest run. Here, there was some discussion on whether or not you could repeatedly dead coin and end up one-shotting Minos. If you don't know what dead coining is, neither did I until I started researching for this video. More specifically, not even up until this point in my research, where I saw in the next time set by Queck in the video description a great explanation of what dead coining is. If you don't know what's being done, it's dead coining, or more descriptively, dead coin damage stacking. Whenever you throw a coin, there's a short period where it can't be shot, known as the dead coin period. Coins will still try to target them, and damage is still added as if you were stacking coins for a Rico shot. In this instance, you slowly stack damage by punching the first coin 3 times, shoot it, and then quickly throw a second coin to transfer damage to it, and then repeat the process. Dead coining does not bypass the pre-enemy coin punch damage cap. Punching is just done to maintain the coin, stall for the cooldown, and get some extra style, although doing 3 punches before starting a dead coin chain does seem to be more effective. it was getting kind of difficult to get the necessary style points and get under a certain time. This would completely bypass the need to worry about getting enough style points, as you could rack them up at the end. In this run that I'm referring to, Queck managed to pull off the dead coin strategy extremely well, getting an ultra ricochet times 63. Since the exponential multiplier was removed, preventing the circumvention of the needed style points, as you would just get 1,000 anyway with that strategy, this was a fantastic solution. You may also notice that on the screen, with this strategy, Queck achieved that fabled sub 120, with a time of 119.926. This isn't the first time that the second barrier was broken by a slim margin, and it probably won't be the last. Queck wasn't satisfied there, however. 3 days after this attempt, he had apparently refined his technique slightly, realizing that with all of this coin stacking, he wouldn't need to use a slower, bulkier rail cannon to finish off Minos. He instead opted on just to shoot the already overpowered coin with the marksman revolver, still managing a kill on Minos, coming out to a time breaking into the 118s with a 118.905. Even though this run was a second clear of the previous world record, according to the Duck, this run was a mess, and he had managed to get the style only because of a friendly fire bonus at the end of Flesh Prison. Although at this point he was world record holder by a large margin, since second place at the time was a 124 by Hayes mentioned earlier, and third was a 129 by a runner going by what I'm pronouncing as Mistern. It would take a little time for this to be broken, but a little over 3 weeks later, on October 26, 2021, he would manage it. He would further optimize his movements over the course of an entire level. This allows for a time of 118.141, nearly a second of time save. After this, the October 28th patch was actually released for my birthday. No, that was a joke. It didn't do anything notable for the P-1 run, but it did affect a lot of other runs, which took a lot of attention from the community for a time. In fact, after a runner named Bogdan Off submitted a time of 122 the day of the patch, there were no submissions for a few weeks, since there were several other runs to attend to. Times eventually started coming in mid to late November, nearly a month after the new patch had dropped. During his break from grinding for the world record, Queck decided he would bully some of the other bosses in the game, namely Gabe and the V2 rematch, and revisit Minos to do a couple of challenges. In this time, he had actually posted a video of him getting a .772 second Minos kill.
And thy punishment is death.
Which he actually managed to emulate in his next run. Getting the slightest bit of cleaner movement throughout the level, and keeping the same strategy that had been used for the last few world records, he decided that Minos' punishment
is death,
setting a time of 117.979. Interestingly, he went into the fight a little bit under on style, 1,000 points under where you would normally enter the fight. However, this was made up for with a slightly modified strategy for the dead coining, with him achieving a ricochet of times 449, and with a very fast punch shot combo to finish off Minos. This was it. A nearly perfect run. From a glance, it looks unbeatable. Second place at the time, though, was a 120.531, a comfortable nearly 3 seconds away. Other than a few other very minor, very insignificant optimizations, a few hundredths of a second here and there, but there is simply nothing more that could be done here. However, this fails to consider one very crucial thing about ULTRAKILL as we know it. It's still in early access. It's not done. New content will keep dropping until the game is a completed masterpiece. This includes anything from new bosses, to new levels, to new secrets, to the most important thing to this run: new weapons. On February 17th, 2022, a new patch for ULTRAKILL released called the Saw Your Heart update. In it, aside from the casual bug fixes, there is a new weapon in the game, the long-awaited alternate nail gun. This one required you to solve a puzzle in 4-4, granting you the Sawblade launcher. Imagine 10 of the nails conglomerated into a singular Sawblade. That's now the gun. Everything else is the same as far as the blue variant is concerned. However, this new weapon ended up causing a lot of havoc. How so? First, we need to talk about something rather important: magnet weight. In case you don't know what that is, it involves a nail gun, and more specifically, the magnet, surprising to nobody. When you fire nails or saw blades at a magnet in a current copy of ULTRAKILL, eventually the magnet draws them in. For nails, they all make this tiny orbit, not really taking up much more space than the magnet. For saws, it's a much larger orbit that's circular in style around the magnet, making it easier to lure enemies into it, at the cost of not being able to attach it to them, and also theoretically it doesn't do as much damage. After firing more and more shots at the magnet, it'll start beeping at a higher and higher pitch, turning colors from green to red, at which point a magnet will break and everything attached to it will go flying. This happens because each nail in Sawblade has something called a weight to it. Basically just a way of stopping people from putting down hundreds or even thousands of nails and or saws so that bosses like this won't just die immediately. And this was the problem. Perhaps as an attempt to see if anyone would pick up on it, or possibly simple negligence, Hikita the developer accidentally forgot to set the weight of the saw blades. All the saws were weighted at 0, meaning theoretically you could put infinite amounts of saws on a singular magnet. The very mechanic I just described, that was implemented specifically to prevent players from performing insta-kills on bosses, was forgotten about. This was fixed 2 days later in a lukewarm fix on February 19th of 2022. However, speedrunners had already used this glitch to nearly its full potential. The day of the Saw Your Heart update, February 17th, 2022, Queck got a world record run with it, and set one of the greatest speedruns we will ever see. 114.698. This run is the pinnacle of what happens when something broken ends up being completely usable. This run combines every known tech usable in this fight, every optimization made over the course of nearly a year, and one of the most accidentally broken weapons in the entire game. First, the slam storage, and instead of grabbing the torch immediately, Queck turns back after some time to maximize speed in the air. This prevents any accidental strafing from turning to grab the torch. A great torch placement can conserve momentum, land him in a flesh prison fight where the new Sawblade tastes its first blood. Several shots, including a magnet, are fired straight into flesh prison, and given its very large hitbox, the circle that Sawblades make around the magnet all end up being in orbit to hit directly flesh prison. This includes a special overheat Sawblade, or this orange one, which can hit one enemy several times before breaking. Queck then resorts to previous coin strategies, firing a piercer shot into it to take flesh prison to half health. Keep in mind, it's only been about 3 seconds here. A very well maneuvered nuke takes out a good amount of the eyes and damages flesh prison even further. Shotgun swapping and punching make a return as well, helping the eternally hitting Sawblade to finish off flesh prison's health, and a few well-placed split shots take out the remaining eyes at the end of the fight. Queck then spends literally the entire cutscene laying down a very specifically placed Sawblade trap. I actually called in speedrun leaderboard moderator and multi-time world record holder Usam on this, since typically, in my experience, you cannot fire Sawblades this fast. He said that there was a method of spamming the click button to fire, as opposed to just holding it down, so that the overheat bar won't fill up, since that would make the gun fire slower. As you see, and as Usam said, the Minos kill comes down to a well-placed magnet, spam-clicking saws onto it, remagneting, then spam-clicking again. Magnets actually break after a given time, whether or not you have the weight limit on them anyway. However, with continuously replacing the magnet, it keeps all of the saws in place and allows you to continuously build them up, given that, at the time, the magnets didn't have a weight limit when it came to saws. Once the cutscene neared its end, Queck donned the marksman revolver, performed a few coin punches to supplement the damage that the saws would be doing, and as the magnet's about to explode, skips the rest of the cutscene and punched the coin into Minos, who conveniently spawned directly in the path of all these saws. These saws, once they circle around to where Minos is standing, end up hitting him all at once for mass amounts of damage. In fact, this here is actually the game lagging because there's so much damage being done and the game is trying to process it. All of this to get Minos to die in just a fraction of a second. This act of the video, however, is labeled as controversy. So what was the controversy exactly? Well, given this glitch existed in the game for a grand total of 2 days, and yes, it was a glitch, but unlike the shotgun punch, which ended up becoming an intended feature, this was a little too broken to keep around. The community was a little upset with these runs, actually. comments flooding Queck's video, and a steady stream of messages into the developers' inboxes all saying the saw gun must be nerfed. As I mentioned, it was nerfed 2 days later, to which massive props to the devs for quick fixing it like that. But as for Queck's run here, given that I'm talking about it, it remained as the world record. However, because of this run remaining, the controversy surrounding the Sawblade lingers to this day as well, knowing full well that several records were broken because of this glitch. This actually went on to become known to the community as the Sawblade controversy of 2022, commonly shorthanded to SawCon. Sock on these nuts. Got him. However, this glitch being taken out of the game doesn't mean that the world record history stops there. Queck came back at himself yet again with a 114.616, beating his old world record by a mere 0.082 seconds. This is actually a lot more time than it looks like on the surface, however, as Queck managed this time without SawCon. At least not the overpowered version of it. SawCon as a concept still exists, it's just that with the advent of saws now having weight to them, the theoretical maximum damage one Sawblade trap can do is a lot less than infinite. Starting the fights, the SawCon strat is kept for the Flesh Prison fight. Coin punched into Flesh Prison, Piercer Shot, Nuke, all things we've seen before. However, here's where some changes come in. You may have noticed that there was no overpump boost to get on Flesh Prison like normal. This is because it wouldn't do much good to be on Flesh Prison while all that's being done is shooting saws. Therefore, Queck uses the nuke to get up as opposed to having to jump away to be able to nuke. Also, slamming and punching make a return, but not accompanied by a shotgun this time. Here, Queck uses the saw gun again to simply spam more saws, and this fight is actually where all of the time save occurs. In the Minos fight, we return to the dead coining strats, allowing a still very fast but slower than the saws Minos kill, ending the level with what is a new world record by less than 1/10 of a second. And that's where the world record stands today. Knowing the ULTRAKILL community, however, they won't stop until every last millisecond is squeezed out of a level. Even though this is a world record by a large margin at the moment, we never know what ULTRAKILL may have to offer us in the future. And I, for one, know that I'm not the only person that's excited to see where this goes.